Seems like every animated TV show or movie has a live-action adaptation nowadays. But Scooby-Doo got a jump start on that about 21 years ago, as today at the Channel Point's request of Blade, we're going to look at Scooby-Doo the movie, released in 2002. This film was directed by Raja Gosnell, who also directed films such as Big Mama's House and Home Alone 3, which are definitely films that exist. And this film was written by Mr. I'm going to do over the whole DCEU himself, James Gunn. The film included a pretty good cast of Freddie Prinze Jr., Sarah Michelle Gellar, Matthew Lillard, Linda Cardellini, Rowan Atkinson, Miguel Nunez, and Isla Fisher. And Scooby-Doo in this film was voiced by Neil Fanning. What's this one about? Well, believe it or not, at the beginning of the film, Mystery Incorporated break up and stay broken up for 2 years until they're all called to a mysterious island. It's a party island, but for whatever reason, everyone leaves emotionless, and the gang have to reunite, learn to work together again, and figure out the mystery. There was a lot of money poured into this film, $84 million to be exact, and it made that back and more, making $275.5 million at the box office. The film received negative reviews from critics, but positive reviews from the people who actually watched it, and it's well regarded by audiences nowadays. The only thing about this film the critics did like was the performance of Matthew Lillard as Shaggy Rogers, which would work out well for Lillard in the long term, as in 2009, after Casey Kasem retired as the animated voice role of Shaggy, Lillard took over, and still voices Shaggy to this day. But were Mystery Incorporated able to solve this new mystery? Well, we're going to find out right now as we look at Scooby-Doo the movie, released in 2002. So our film begins at an abandoned factory where the gang is doing battle with a mysterious Luna ghost. Although their plan doesn't go, well, exactly to plan, they're able to take the ghost down, and it's revealed to be Old Man Withers, because it's always a guy in a mask. Pamela Anderson then shows up in the Mystery Machine for whatever reason, I guess she's a reporter, and then Fred, as he apparently always does, starts taking credit for the whole thing. Velma's upset with Fred always taking credit for her plans, and Daphne is upset with always being the damsel in distress. As a result of this, Daphne, Fred, and Velma all quit, leaving Shaggy and Scooby on their own. We then jump to 2 years later, where Shaggy and Scooby are cooking up some hamburgers on the beach. They then get a knock on the door, however, where they're invited to the mysterious Spooky Island, a horror-themed tropical resort, where apparently there's a mystery to solve. Fred and Velma have apparently gotten the same invite as they meet up at the airport. Fred is now on a book tour, while Velma now works at NASA. They also meet up with Daphne, who was tired of being a damsel in distress and is now a black belt in martial arts. And they finally reunite with Shaggy and Scooby, Scooby dressed up as a woman, as they don't allow big dogs on the plane. And while on said plane, Shaggy meets and immediately becomes attracted to a woman named Mary Jane, which is like his favorite name ever. They arrive on Spooky Island and meet the island caretaker, Emil Montevarius. Montevarius tells them that while everyone arrives at the island happy, they leave completely emotionless, and he wants them to figure out why. The gang look for clues and interview people, and that night Velma watches a ritual done by the island natives headed by the voodoo maestro and a luchador named Zarkos. Daphne meanwhile meets a voodoo priest, which directs her to an abandoned haunted castle, which used to be an amusement ride. And Scooby is lured into the forest with a promise of hamburgers before he's attacked by a demon before inadvertently getting rid of said demon and escaping. Daphne then recruits Shaggy and Scooby to go with her to said haunted castle, and when they arrive, they find that Velma and Fred are already there. They all split up, and then a little person working some sort of controls within the haunted house activates the mechanics. These mechanics almost kill all 5 of them before Fred gets thrown through a window and lands on the guy and stops the controls. Daphne finds some sort of artifact called the Daemon-ritis, which sure does look important. The alarm then goes off and they hide from the perpetrators, who are revealed to be the voodoo maestro and Zarkos, because of course. They go back to the hotel lobby where Velma investigates the Daemon-ritis before she's talked up by some guy named Brad. Eventually, she starts reminiscing on old times, where everything was good, except one thing: Scooby's egotistical cousin, Scrappy-Doo. And after an incident where Scrappy pissed on Daphne and then demanded to be made group leader, he was promptly ditched by the rest of them. Hey, remember that monster that attacked Scooby earlier? Yeah, he bursts in the room and starts attacking everybody, and oh, there's more than one. They don't just attack people, they suck out their souls, including the souls of Fred and Velma. Daphne tries to save Mr. Montefarius, but he too is taken by the demons. Well, we're down to 4 now: Shaggy, Daphne, Scooby, and also Mary Jane. Mary Jane phones the Coast Guard, but they too have been compromised. The four wake up on the beach the next day to find everything that was smashed up the previous day is now fine again. That's weird. They walk for a performance by Sugar Ray, who is hilariously in this movie, before finding Fred, who is talking strangely and not seeming like himself at all. Oh, and also it appears he's actually a demon now. Daphne, meanwhile, is ambushed by Zarkos, who takes back the Damon-ritis. Demon Fred and Demon Friends attack Shaggy and Scooby before they escape on quads. They run into Mary Jane and continue to escape, but when Mary Jane hits her head on a branch, it's revealed to Scooby that she is also a demon. They then arrive at that ritual main site that Velma was on the previous day, and Scooby begins barking at Mary Jane and trying to tell Shaggy that she's a demon. Shaggy doesn't believe him, however, and they begin to fight until Scooby falls down a hole. And despite the fight, Shaggy and Scooby are best friends, and Shaggy goes down to save him. Shaggy then finds some sort of chalice which contains the souls of everybody's soul sucked on the island. He frees Velma's soul, which goes back to her body and immediately expels the demon. Upon being expelled, the demon explodes because of the sunlight, which obviously reveals the reason the demons were possessing people was to use their bodies because they can't walk out in the sun. Shaggy also frees the souls of Fred and Daphne, but they end up in each other's bodies. Shaggy also takes back the Damon-ritis, and all four meet up in the forest. And after some trial and error, the Damon-ritis successfully realigns the correct souls with the correct bodies. They go back to the beach where they meet that voodoo priest again, who reveals why he's doing these rituals. He casually reveals that he knows that the demons are performing some sort of dark apocalypse which will see them control the earth for 10,000 years. Would have been nice to share that information sooner. The only way for them to roll, though, is to sacrifice a pure soul, but they then realize it doesn't have to be a human soul, it just has to be a pure soul, and the sacrifice is going to be Scooby-Doo. They also realize that Scooby had to have been brought here by somebody, and of course the person who brought him here is Mr. Montevarious. Mr. Montevarious feeds Scooby some Scooby snacks, and then tells him that he wants Scooby to be a sacrifice, and Scooby agrees, because he doesn't know what that is. Shaggy then eats the Scooby snack himself, and the gang all vow to get Scooby back. They then steal a disco ball and some rock climbing equipment, and form a plan. In the underground ritual site, they rig up said disco ball using the rock climbing equipment, and their plan is this. They're gonna free everybody's souls, and once the demons are expelled, they're gonna use the disco ball to reflect sun from a vent they're gonna open to kill them all. Of course, when Shaggy accidentally gets caught on the rigging, everything goes sour, and they have to improvise. Shaggy accidentally spears a guard and then takes his costume. After the soulless people enter for the ritual, Fred and Velma have to improvise by pretending to be soulless themselves. They're then caught out, however, when Fred can't stop breaking it down, and Scooby's brought in for the sacrifice. Shaggy, who again is disguised as a guard, tries to convince Scooby to run, but once he finally does, Scooby begins to have his soul sucked. The souls all enter the Damon-ritis, which is being held by Montevarious, but before he can absorb Scooby's soul, Shaggy stops him and knocks him over. Fred then unmasks Montevarious, who's revealed to be a robot? But not just any robot, a robot suit controlled by Scrappy-Doo! Puppy power! And using the souls that he's absorbed, Scrappy then transforms into a giant Scrappy Rex, here to take his revenge on Scooby-Doo and Mystery Inc. Meanwhile, Daphne, who got away after the rock climbing mishap, has made her way to the top of the mountain they're at, and is looking to open the vents. Before she can, however, she's intercepted by Zarkos, and they begin doing the big wrestle. Shaggy and Scooby, meanwhile, try to avoid Scrappy until they're intercepted by Mary Jane, who neutralizes Shaggy and hands Scooby off. Just as Scrappy's about to suck Scooby's soul, however, Daphne, who's won her fight with Zarkos, kicks him through the vent, and he lands in the soul chalice, tipping it over and returning everyone's souls to their bodies. The disco ball also comes free, which kills all the demons after they're expelled from the bodies. And then Shaggy uses a big crane device to take the Damon-ritis off of Scrappy, transforming him back into his normal wimpy self. And in the aftermath, Fred and Daphne make out. Shaggy finds the real Montevarious, who's been trapped in a hole for 2 years because of Scrappy, and also Velma forms something with Brad. And then Shaggy reunites with Scooby and Mary Jane. Unfortunately, these characters of Mary Jane and Brad don't really matter anymore because we're not going to see them in the second film. The Coast Guard finally show up and arrest Scrappy and friends, and Fred, for once, finally gives credit to Velma. They're then told about some sort of monster going on in London, and Mystery Inc. reunites and promises to deal with it to end the film. So one thing I forgot to note at the beginning of the film is, believe it or not, for whatever reason, in contrast to Thomas and the Magic Railroad, which we did last week, I actually did not like this film as a kid. I don't entirely remember why, but I just remember not liking it. Did I like it more watching it now? Yes, for a couple of reasons. One, I have a newfound appreciation, especially with how films are nowadays, for shorter films. Not counting credits, this film is like 80 minutes, which is all it needs to be. Not to get into some other side rant, but it seems like every film nowadays has to be at least 2 hours, if not 2.5 hours. It's fine to make a 90-minute film. It's fine to make an 80-minute film. With most things, that's what you should make, because that way you don't stretch your source material and just make the movie all bloated. If this movie had been 2 hours, if they had tried to fit in 40 more minutes of crap in here, I probably wouldn't have liked it as much as I did, but they didn't bloat it at all. It was exactly as long as it needed to be. Another reason why I probably liked it now is this is not really a kid's movie. Trust me, it's not. There's a whole bunch of references, which I can't do justice in this review. One of them I did, the Mary Jane joke, which is obvious, but a lot that you will not get as a young kid watching this. But if you watched this as a kid, if you watch this as a kid and haven't watched it since, watch it back now, and there's a lot of stuff that you might not remember that you'll definitely get now. And while I agree Matthew Lillard was the best out of the cast, I think everyone else played their roles really well as well. The plot was pretty basic, but it is a Scooby-Doo movie, so it didn't have to be complicated. The one part I didn't like, though, is they compromised the reveal. I guess maybe they figured that the audiences wouldn't know who Scrappy was, which is definitely a mistake. They revealed Scrappy halfway through the movie and then put it in your heads like, oh, they randomly talked about Scrappy for no reason. I bet he won't be the villain. Oh, he was the villain. Whoa. Like, they didn't need to do that. They could have just cut that scene and revealed at the end of the movie that Scrappy was the villain, and people would have popped for it because people know who Scrappy is. Regardless of the reception to the character, if you're a fan of the Scooby-Doo franchise, which I imagine most people who went to see this was, you know who Scrappy is. That aside though, I think this is a pretty faithful Scooby-Doo adaptation, again with just some more adult themes, and if you're a fan of the franchise, I would definitely recommend checking it out. And if you're not a fan of the franchise and you're just looking for a fun movie to kill 80 minutes, because again, it's only 80 minutes, I would recommend this film to you as well. And to repeat myself, if you saw this movie as a child and you haven't seen it since, I would 100% recommend seeing it again, because you will absolutely see it in a new light. But that is going to do it for my Scooby-Doo look back at Scooby-Doo 2002. Thank you, Blade, for using your points on this. That is it from me today. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like. If you didn't like it, don't. If you want to follow any of my social media links, they're all in the video description down below, as well as the names of all my patrons. Thank you to my patrons for supporting me and my channels. I appreciate you guys. With all that being said, though, my name is Noah Taft. This has been my Scooby-Doo look back at Scooby-Doo 2002, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.